What is good, NIO family? It's Rey-Jay back with another video. And in this one, I want to break down what's going on with NIO, Tesla, SPY, Nvda, the QQQ, and a couple of other tickers. I'm going to break down what the news is saying about the market thus far, what the news is saying about NIO, what you should be watching for as time progresses. But before I begin the devil's information, before I give you guys any price predictions for NIO and other stocks out there, let me just mention a couple of things. Firstly, I am not a financial planner, so take nothing I say as financial advice. And also, if you guys can, please check out the Moomoo link, which is down below and in the description. If you sign up for Moomoo, the link down below, and deposit $100 into the account, you are guaranteed 5 free stocks. If you deposit $1,000, you're guaranteed up to 15 free stocks, and the offer ends very soon. Anyways, when it comes to the way the market is moving, NIO is on a bit of a downtrend today. We came down about 5.74% because NIO announced a new piece of news, and the market did come down, which contributed to NIO dropping the way it did. But I want to break down why this is happening and some other important things. So let's first talk about some data and then break down what happened to the markets before I talk about NIO. The whole market actually ended up selling off a bit today. Some stocks did outperform, such as like Amazon and a few others, but we did see most stocks and ETFs actually sell off a bit because PPI came out harder than expected. Everything was as expected except for PPI for all items. So month over month, it was 0.6%. That's above expectations. And then PPI year over year was at basically 1.6%. This was above expectations. PPI for the core side, so core PPI was aligned with expectations at 2%, and core PPI was at 0.3% aligned with expectations. But the other PPIs for all items were hotter than expected. So what does this mean basically? PPI is the producer price index. It's basically wholesale inflation. This means that as a leading indicator for CPI, there is going to be a risk of inflation coming up for all items, and this could be inflated by some metrics. But overall, I just want to say that this is risky for the Fed, and the Fed is now being more and more incentivized to kind of keep rates the same, and maybe even not like essentially cut as much as they may have thought. So we're going to be very careful with this coming out. With this data coming out, it sold off a little bit. But going into tomorrow, there's not really much data coming out. All we have is basically some manufacturing numbers before the market opens, just manufacturing production, very, very minor data. But then the main times we watch for data is going to be 10 o'clock a.m. because we have the Michigan Consumer Sentiment Reports. This is going to cause a move, in my opinion, either help the market continue pushing or not, or it could cause the market to drop. So watch for the 5-year inflationary expectations, the current conditions reports and other things like that, and we'll see what happens after that. Now, on top of all of this, I just want to mention that we have some more data that came out. We had Adobe just announce its earnings, which is very minor, nothing too insane for the overall market. Then we just have a few more for tomorrow, very, very minor earnings. Adobe share prices are actually down because despite the fact that they ended up meeting on EPS, they also ended up meeting on revenue. They actually somewhat beat on EPS, wasn't like that big of a beat. But overall, decent earnings. But the reason why the share price is down is because their forecast is not as good. So looking forward, they actually have some soft earnings, and they're going to be looking for these changes right here. So for the fiscal second quarter, earnings of $4.35 to $4.40, with 5.25 billion to about 5.3 billion in revenue. That is basically very, very close to what analysts were looking for, but a little bit on the lower end for some things like revenue. Revenue is a little bit lower, so that's not the best of things. It's also setting aside $25 billion for share buybacks, but overall wasn't enough. The share price is still down. Now, for tomorrow, I'm a little bit more uncertain about how things are going to plan out because we have OPEX, not OPEX, sorry, it's not OPEX, it's quadruple witching basically. And what this basically means is we have a 3.1 puts to call ratio. We have a ton of options expiring, so close to 1.3 million of these calls expiring. And we have over 4 million puts expiring for the 3.1 puts to call ratio. On top of all of this, NIO has signed the framework agreement in Beijing. They joined to basically accelerate the development and adoption of long life batteries. And when this news came out, we actually saw NIO drop a bit. This was kind of like a buy the rumor, sell the news event. There is some good news. Load up, says Morgan Stanley. They're talking about NIO stock. They're saying that NIO has so much potential, and they're telling investors to load up on the shares. They're looking very, very good. NIO also confirmed its new codename Alps sub-brand is known as Onvo. That's going to be targeting EVs for families, and that's good news for them. So basically, there were some new images that came out about this. Now it's been officially confirmed that with this coming out, NIO is working on its new sub-brand, and that's going to be it's going to be more useful for the others out there. The Firefly sub-brand will also be launching in China and Europe in 2025. And when joining different markets in the EU, they're going to be having crossover EVs as well. So with the new brand called Onvo, that is going to be coming out very soon. They're going to be looking into basically working very hard to improve their overall view right now. They're trying to improve the way the cars look, and they're trying to make the cars more affordable. That's what this is going to be mainly made for, if anything. So that's a big improvement. We'll see if this ends up working very well for them. That is something they announced. Volume is coming down to about 42 million. NIO is selling off a bit despite that. Short volume is also down to about 40%. And overall, HSBC has maintained a buy rating for NIO, but I haven't really seen any other ratings since. The price-price ratio is dropping a bit as NIO is losing some strength. And when it comes to seasonality, we're only green about 50% of the time on Thursdays. Fridays are green about 53% of the time. March tends to be a weaker month for NIO historically, but April tends to be better. And for seasonality, at 11 a.m. and also during the last hour of the day, we tend to be the most volatile. So we'll see how all of this goes for NIO. Tomorrow is likely not going to be like the strongest of days, but I just want to call out that NIO has been selling off quite a bit. We're continuing to downtrend. The 4 hours looking pretty weak, and there is a risk of this dropping even lower. So looking at this, I do believe that this thing may approach 5.5 before we see some kind of attempts to bounce. If we lose this, our next target is going to be 5.4. Somewhere in that range, I do believe NIO is going to try to base, and we're going to see some sideways price action. So I see it selling off a little bit more, but then we're going to be watching to see if we get a bounce near 5.5 and try to make our way back up. If we do get a bounce, you want to see it break 5.68. If that breaks, we'll be pushing back up to 5.8. But my prediction is this is going to come down a little bit more, then try to get a rebound. And I think 5.5, 5.5 flat could be tested for 5.68 before we try to come back. For SPY is on a bit of a downtrend for now. It's starting to downtrend just a little bit, at least for the super micro timeframes. And it's looking a little bit weak, especially because we tried to rebound and we just came back down. So we're going to be watching this test. I think SPY is going to come down a bit, but watch and see, can we bounce very close to 512? If we bounce off this thing can start pushing back up because this could be a liquidity grab right here. So look for a test of 512 and an attempt to bounce back up. If we manage to bounce back, we have to break past 516.5 to turn bullish. But if we come back to 512 and we fail to get the bounce, we're going to be coming down to 509. So I think there's going to be a big test tomorrow. With quadruple witching, we could go either way. We'll see what the market makers try to do. We were range bound for almost the entire day, so it's a little bit indecisive on SPY. But I anticipate it's going to come down first, and we're going to be watching for a bounce or not. So watch for that very carefully. I'm seeing something very similar on the QQQ. The QQQ will likely end up testing 438, if not 436, his entire range one more time. It might come down a bit, and we'll have to see if we bounce or not. The current technicals do suggest it could go a little lower. We could actually approach these lower levels down here, so it's like 436 again. So it's going to likely fall another a couple of points, get very close to 436, and we'll see if we get a big bounce back up to 440 or not. But watch for that test. There could be a bit more downside coming, and we'll see if we bounce or not. But that's going to depend on a lot of different factors. Nvda is also dictating this. Nvda did not get the best of closes. It's going to be testing 870 as support. Watch and see if we hold this. If we lose 870, a bigger drop is going to be coming all the way down to 862 and eventually closer to 850. If we bounce off 870, we could push back up higher. But overall, I do think there's a risk of us testing 870. We'll see what happens after that. For the not the QQQ, for I was going to be looking at Aapl, and then Tesla, of course. Apple's also in a very, very critical place. This thing is trying to bounce a little bit, but it failed to get a really, really clean break of 174. So we'll see if we can get that break tomorrow or not. Watch 173.64 as resistance on 174. If we break that, we could push towards 175. If we reject off 173.64, we're going to be coming back down. So watch for that very, very carefully. And then finally, we have Tesla. So Tesla, in my opinion, it's been on a big downtrend. It's been continuing to sink. The thing about Tesla is we keep getting hit with more and more bad news. So we're going to be watching a test of 160 tomorrow. I think it's going to come down again. We're currently at 162, but I think it's going to test 160 and see if we can try to bounce off of it or not. We have to try to hold this support with quadruple witching around the corner. If we hold it, there could be a rebound towards at least 165. If we fail to hold it, we're going to be sinking all the way down to at least 157.5 and eventually 155. The chart is bearish, so the most likely possibility is we kind of like pop in and come back down to 160. And we might not hold it, guys. So there's a risk of this dropping a bit more because we keep getting hit with bad news. But it's very news dependent, so we'll see how it goes. As of right now, technicals do look a bit more bearish, so just be careful on Tesla. All right, so for NIO, which is getting dragged down because of all this bad news involving EVs, NIO could sink to 5.5. I think it's going to pop and drop to 5.5. And we'll have to see if we bounce back up to 5.8 or if we keep selling off past 5.5. If we lose 5.5, a bigger drop is coming. So we'll have to see how it goes. The best thing to do is just be patient and see. My gut tells me it's going to test that lower level, and we'll see if it bounces or not. But it is looking a little bit weak on the lower time frame, so just be a little bit careful on NIO. So there's a risk of more downside, but watch and see how the technicals develop tomorrow. We have quadruple witching, so do what you have to do, and we'll see how it goes. Thank you for listening. Have a great day, and peace out.